Hello, friends. I'm Philip Magnus, and you're watching whatever this YouTube channel's named. Don't know yet, haven't come up with it, but I'm here with a sci-fi book review. This one on the mercy of gods. And one thing I can say to get started is, wow, what a ride mercy of gods is. I have a confession to make. I didn't even read the blurb on the back of this novel before I picked it up in my local bookstore. The purpose of any blurb is to sell you on a book. Having adored the Expanse TV series and having read the first three books in the novel sequence, review soon to come, I was already sold. You will forgive my surprise and excitement in that case when the story of a group of scientists at the height of their power and professional triumph evolved into a tale of human survival beneath brutal alien subjugation. Anjin is a peaceful world, the only one its human population has known in the 3,500 years since it first discovered the world. All that comes to an end when the Carricks come to collect humanity as if it were mere cattle. The invasion begins with the extermination of a full 1/8 of the population. Before long, the laboratory group the novel follows finds itself transported to a great prison world, its members having become the latest subjects of a cruel, authoritarian alien regime. The Carricks are as stately as they are brutal. I'll let the novel make this case for me. I cite, "On the edged plain, 6 of the Carricks stood. 3 had shells or armor or uniforms, the same green and gold as the invading force on Anjin. The fort was easily half again as large and bone white. It was flanked by 2 more in armor of dull red, and their massive front arms were nearly twice the size of the others. They stood closest to the white one in the center. All 6 radiated the same air of magisterial calm and power. These are but a handful of the creatures upon whose whims the fate of humanity now stands. I would like to take a few moments to define 3 prongs that represent the 3 best features of James S.A. Corey's work to me. The first is world building. Here it is expansive, if you'll pardon the pun. The prison world has an endless supply of varied species the characters see in passing. A whole chapter is assigned with how each of these species copes with life under Carrick's rule. Those psychological sketches are fascinating, the kind of inspired world building that invites you to work out details of your own, to speculate upon various elements of the setting. Corey's effort is excellent in that it creates a sense of an unknowable universe. However, it's not slacking in so far as the very tangible, down to earth culture of Anjin either. Anjin society has its own unique quirks, and they are memorable ones. The most significant, to my mind, being the industrially grown coral that makes up the material of so many of the buildings on this world. Houses made out of a living, breathing material that might even grow and develop in some way with their owner. That idea appeals to me to no end and imagines a sort of ecological future for humanity, an alternative to concrete and the varied, inanimate types of materials that we tend to use and think with in our own architectural construction. Disparate efforts are unified through the character's direction. The brutal species is, it might be argued, a fantastic managerial class, at least if you ask them. But don't take my words for it. let's see what one of their own has to say about the Carricks. The genius of the Carricks is that we brought the peculiar and often idiosyncratic brilliance of 1,000 different species into a central system of control. We conquered asymmetric space by harnessing the birth shrieks of the temperament chi of Ao. We built machines of loyalty by harvesting the poem patterns of Janantai Moss gardeners. My bad. Janantai Moss gardens. We built world palaces designed by the philarchs of Astadeem, communication networks woven from the bodies of the void dragons that eat the foam at the edge of black holes, battleships strengthened by the living shells that choke the oceans of Sinians and Vow. High concept, all of this, and a little bit poetic. Perhaps even inching towards purple prose, but we will forgive James S.A. Corey for this. These images, at least for me, work. They stick in my mind. Unchained technology has instead a biotech edge to it, beyond just the architectural. The fact is, the laboratory group that we follow in this novel is famous for cracking a unique biological issue. For example, Tonner and the scientists under him owe their success to finding a way to make the two unique biospheres on the planet talk to one another. Those being the native one and the earthen one that arrived alongside the humans. It's all engaging stuff. This discussion brings me to the second of the three prongs, the characters. The characters are more or less recognizable archetypes at first. They develop into fully fleshed out and unique characters, most of whom I came to care about a great deal. Tonner, the leader of the laboratory, is the workaholic genius scientist. He's capable of making grand leaps of imagination in the sphere of biology. His leadership is, at first, unquestioned, until, of course, it is. I found Tonner difficult to like, in part because of the first impressions gained from him, both from David's perspective, whom it might be argued is the central of our protagonists, and through his own, that is, Tonner's point of view. Both of these speak to a man who pushes others and himself too hard. Brilliant, with all the baggage that comes with. Elsa is his second, a scientist who abandoned her own project to become a part of Tonner's. She's romantically attached to Tonner and a brilliant scientist in her own right. Most of the members of the laboratory group are Kampar, a large, boisterous, and exceptionally witty man who plays the role of jester of the group, always cracking jokes. Noi and Sinna are the elders of the group, a pair of researchers who have found nirvana in one another and in their small garden. Not much to say about them without lots of spoilers. Likewise, with Irina and Ricard, though I will say, Ricard's rehabilitation is an engaging minor character arc. Jessen is second to David as far as point of view chapters go, or so it felt, and she is a special one. Jessen struggles with a chemical imbalance in her brain. This awakens suicidal ideation within her, which is controlled chemically. That control becomes significantly more difficult when the humans of Angine are dispossessed and stolen away to one of the character's homeworlds. The struggles she faces, the pain she goes through, and what is in store for her, it follows a blueprint for a remarkable female character. James S.A. Corey is noted for some of the most fantastic female characters, so that should come as no surprise. The capacity Jessen has for picking herself up is nothing short of a miracle. David is a relatable protagonist from the get go. Someone who listens far more than he speaks, intelligent, able, at least a little ambitious. Well, more than a little. Little learned to the ways of the world, perhaps. Though far from wise. He is someone who seeks understanding. As the novel progresses, he might well be the only one close to beginning to understand humanity's new alien overlords. Here's a little more on David, from the perspective of his colleague Ricard. There was a constant sense of overwhelm that haunted Ricard, haunted all of them, except maybe David Alcor. Ricard had thought little of David before, the nephew of a powerful woman, a middling scientist, a half-assed lab drone. He'd always seemed like he was moving through life on autopilot. Now, though, Ricard thought he'd underestimated the young man. He was only moving slow while he put all the pieces together in his head, readying his game-winning move. Maybe constantly being underestimated was just part of the strategy. Then, finally, there is the swarm. The dynamic this swarm has with its hosts, with David, these are the stuff of nightmare, blood-pumping, adrenaline, and narrative alike. The swarm has to be the most interesting of these characters. The stakes it plays by are likewise at a much grander scale than those of the humans. The swarm is implicated in a war of a cosmic scale. It might not surprise you to learn that it is not on the character's side. I'm interested in the swarm in part because it promises to become a more and more complex example of a networked consciousness and intelligence. A distributed intelligence system that I could probably write a whole academic essay about. I'm a bit of a nerd that way. There is one last prong in what I identify as the James S.A. Corey formula: politics. This prong is much more absent here than it is in some of James Corey's other books. There are hints of politics, however. Intergroup ones can certainly be found, but here I mean those system and galaxy-defining politics that were so keenly represented by a character such as Christian Avasarala in The Expanse. David will be an apt political player on this scene. This is foreshadowed from Chapter 1. But this book is all about survival, and political action is always cut off before it may blossom in full. My expectation is the sequel will focus on politics a whole lot more, just like The Expanse's second book did, as opposed to the first. Because the humans have got some crumbs of political power now, and I expect that David will gather a whole lot more. I'm sure someone's complaining about the lack of political machinations, but I would like to remind folks that politics came to the foreground again in The Expanse's second book. A little bit of patience never hurt anyone, is all I'm saying. The characters are well defined. They possess both individuality and a powerful group identity. They're also wholly amoral in the human sense. Their values are so far away from anything that human society values. Each one of the 6 parts of the novel open with epigraphs like the one that I drew my second quote from, which reveal this alien way of thinking. They're a terrifying antagonist and the titular gods of the novel. One thing they do not possess, however, is the quality of mercy, which makes the title a very ironic one, doesn't it? I don't often make a note of this in my reviews, but the descriptive text, especially of the Carrick's prison world, absolute sci-fi goodness of the most humongous, gargantuan scale. Corey paces this novel with aplomb. Conflict explodes at times unexpectedly, and leaves both the characters and the reader slack-jawed. Likewise with certain narrative choices, which rarely failed to produce a visceral reaction in me. No character outside of David came across as having plot armor, and he does only because of the excellent use of foreshadowing that you will find in both the early chapters and the epigraphs of each part of the novel. I want to spend more time in this world with these characters to find out what awaits them and how the characters will fall. If there's one thing I know for sure, it is that they will fall. That's never really been in question. To watch this galactic empire come to ruin will be a joy. Bring on the next book, please, and soon. And you folks still watching with me, tell me, what are your experiences with James S. A. Corey's literature? That's two authors, not one, but together they truly brought, I thought, a sort of renaissance to space opera, especially on TV, and not just. What they did with those 9 Expanse novels, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. To do so, I will in fact spend the next 3 Mondays reviewing the first 3 novels of the Expanse series. After that, who is to know? Maybe, just maybe, I will look at the work of another magisterial sci-fi author, Alistair Reynolds. But there is a while yet to come until then, so I invite you to subscribe to my channel, to like this video. Let me know what sci-fi books you would be interested in hearing more about, and I will try to get back to you with some thoughts on them in due course. Do leave comments down in the comment section below. I'm Philip Magnus, you're not, and I will see you soon. I'll see you soon with perhaps a fantasy review or a miscellaneous review of whatever catches my fancy, but the plan for the channel right now is Mondays, sci-fi reviews, Wednesdays or Fridays, fantasy reviews, and whichever one of those days the fantasy reviews are not landing on, you'll get miscellaneous reviews, which might be literary fiction, it might be non-fiction, it might be short story, anthologies, or magazines, that kind of thing. I have bold plans for this new channel, and of course, if you want to see more videos right now, I have an older YouTube channel, Philip Magnus, where I used to review books, but I also review games there, so I thought I would break things up in nice alternate YouTube channels for the convenience of, well, mostly myself, and also anyone who is interested in just watching book reviews as opposed to wonky game essays and whatnot. Until then, I'm Philip Magnus, and I will see you next time.